Hi, welcome to the Grease Den. I'm Brad, and this is the Grease Den. I like to shoot out high gain amp heads with a variety of different speaker cabinets, IRs, different overdrive pedals that I have. My videos are very nerdy. We go into a deep dive with every amp. We try to do as many different comparisons as possible. I always mic my Soldano cab here. With a H75 and a V30 and an X pattern. I have a SM57 on each, and I tend to do a blend, so you'll mostly be hearing that. But I also have the power station over here, which provides a reactive load, and by using that I can load my own IRs, and I'll do that at some point as well in this video. So yeah, the new amp on the block today is a Jet City JCA100. It's right here. So on the amp we have a crunch channel and an overdrive channel. Both channels kind of have their own distinct flavor. It sounds like the overdrive channel has one additional preamp tube in the circuit, so it has a lot more lows. The amp itself is very like low-mid oriented. Now, feel free to correct me in the comments section on this, please. I welcome all comments, but from my research, what I've come to understand is that the JCA100 is a exact copy of a Soldano hot rod. Now, a lot of people tend to think that it's just a bargain bin SLO, and it really isn't. It's more of a bargain bin hot rod 100. Just from lurking on forums and doing as much reading and research as I can in 2025 with the information that is currently out there about these heads, which were produced, I want to say, between maybe 2008 and 2015 or so. So they had a decent run of maybe 10 years they were making these amps. I remember seeing these amps on the market and not really thinking too much of them. I've heard a lot of demos on the YouTubes of this head that make it sound not so appealing. So I was a little bit hesitant to actually pull the trigger on this, but it sat there on Facebook Marketplace for the better part of a month, and I was just kind of watching it, and he had it listed for local guy. He had it listed for $550, and I just like asked if he would let me have it for $400, and sure enough he did. So I mean, what an insane buy, what an insane purchase. For $400, this amp, it sounds as good as, and I'm not exaggerating here, it sounds as good as basically any of the other amps you see in here. It's crazy. It sounds so good that it can go toe-to-toe with my SLO 100, my Bogner, the Diezel, the JMP. Everything that I've like compared it to sounds, well, comparable. I mean, it sounds like there's a similar DNA there. So there's a little bit of a backstory with the Hot Rod 100 that I'm familiar with. From what I understand, the Hot Rod 100 is basically the Marshall mods that Mike was doing in LA before he started production of the SLO. He was modding JCA800s, modding Plexis, I'm sure, as well. And that was pretty typical type of work for him at that time. So he started making his own amps, and he would, some of the first amps he made were essentially just his modded platform of the JCA800 put into, his own chassis, I guess. And that's what the Hot Rod is. It's basically a recreation of that. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of people say that, well, it's the SLO is what his JCA800 mod was, but the SLO also has a 6L6 power section, whereas a JCA800 has an EL34 power section. They are similar amps, but there's a lot more negative feedback in the SLO. The tone is much more sculpted and, just finagled than like your typical modded JCA800 might sound. Or like a JCA800 with a hot rod is not so comparable to an SLO 100, whereas it's a little more comparable to this, in my opinion. I think this sounds closer to the JMP than the SLO sounds to the JMP. There's just something about the like woody bark that it possesses, especially on the crunch channel when it's cranked. It sounds indiscernible from, you know, a myriad of Marshall tones that might have been used by like AC/DC, you know, Def Leppard, Ozzy, you know, with Randy, like you name it, you know, it's the tones are in there. This little box, you know, which, you know, I was kind of thinking that the reason it was so cheap and being made in China, you know, is the reason it's so cheap. But I was thinking, you know, maybe they skimped on like the transformers, or maybe they skimped on, you know, putting a resistor instead of a choke. But like, nope, 2 massive transformers in this thing. This baby has transformers that are comparable to the SLO, which has the biggest transformers I've ever seen. It still doesn't have anything that's like that, you know, 4-inch stack on the power transformer in the SLO, but they're big. They're really big and beefy, and they sound massive. When you crank it, it does what it's supposed to do. Get up to around 6 or 7, it starts to compress. You start to dial in a lot of that, you know, low end, low mids that starts to come out. It compresses correctly and like musically, and it's not a budget amplifier by sound. By price, sure. And I mean, who knows how long you're gonna be able to get these things for under $500. This is the cheapest amp I've ever bought, excluding a 20-watt Astroverb carcass that I have currently being worked on, and it'll show up in a future video. It's gonna be like kind of a mini hot rod when it's done. But yeah, I'm extremely impressed with this amplifier, and you know, ever since I sold the Avenger, I've really been wanting to add something new to the collection to sort of fill the hole that it left, because like, even though it is very close to an SLO, it has its own flavor, and having like 3 very close amps like the SLO, the T100, which is also a Mike Soldano designed amplifier that predates the Jet City, and then now the JCA100, it really gives me a lot of like additional shootout potential, you know, which I love coming home, you know, after work or on my days off. I just sit down, I just switch everything on like a fighter pilot, and like you see, everything's just set up like this, and I just shoot everything out, you know, and I just play riffs, and it's basically how I relax. So I mean, for me, this has been a really great purchase. It happened around my birthday, so I feel really like, you know, lucky to have found it for a really an amazing price. You know, it's a fraction of the price of an actual hot rod, which is, you know, $1,500 minimum for a 100-watt. The Avenger is $1,500 minimum, you know, and pretty much, I mean, so, and a SLO, of course, is, you know, $3,000 to $4,000, depending on if you buy new or used. So I would recommend to anybody, you know, if you can find one of these for a decent price, grab it. Now, this particular Jet City is a the JCA100, obviously, and it has no depth mod. So it does not have depth mod. It is the JCA100H, as opposed to the JCA100HDM, which stands for head depth mod. This is just the head. So, but again, I was kind of shocked that, like, you know, just plugging straight into it, no depth mod, just like turn the bass up, turn the gain relatively high. I mean, it reacts just like the SLO or the Avenger did. Like, you don't necessarily want or need to dime the gain because it has a bright cap, it gets mushy. So, you know, around like 5 or 6 is like sufficient. And it actually gives you enough gain, and it's tight and percussive. And then dialing in that bass, it brings it into like a lower mid frequency that doesn't get mushy. It just stays tight. I mean, not a lot of amps do that in this price range. Like, not really any that I can think of. There aren't any, you know? I mean, I'm sorry, this is just like the best deal you can get on an amp. The only thing that's close to it, I would say, is a Cherrytone, you know, which I've had one of those on the channel, and those are amazing amps, but like, you have to wait for them to get made to order, and they're more expensive than this new. They're $1,500. Some of them are $1,000, but, you know, and the only other thing I can think of that would be close would be like the Ukrainian builds, the Crab amps, like the Marcus, and which is a Mesa Mark III clone that this guy makes in Ukraine. And I haven't had a chance to try that yet, but I've seen some great demos of them online. I'd really like to get my hands on one of those someday. So yeah, as far as complaints go, I don't really have a lot of complaints about this amp right now. I've had it for about 4 or 5 days. Played it every day, and I feel like it sounds, I've jammed with a drummer. I haven't put it on a song yet or anything like that, but I find that the tone is a little more forgiving than the SLO, or maybe the Bogner, you know, or even the Diezel, which are more prone to like reveal your playing flaws, whereas this tends to be a little more comfortable to just plug into. And you know, I don't think it was ever meant to be like a boutique hi-fi amp, and like, you know, it doesn't have the slow transformers in it, so it sounds a little bit more like a traditional like 5150 or, you know, DSL plugging into, you know. But as far as the feel goes and the way that the notes kind of pop out at you, you know, it's kind of like that. But it does have a lot of string clarity, which is, you know, a hallmark of the more high-end Soldano stuff, you know. And it has a certain like kind of squishiness to it as well when you crank it. So it has a lot of the same sort of like qualities and characteristics of a much more expensive boutique head, and I think that it falls in line with the quality that you would expect from a Soldano-designed amplifier. I also read that he made a lot of visits to the factory in China when these were in production, which must have been a blast, you know, for him to get to go to China, and also to be able to be involved in the process to the point where he's saying, you know, these components are good, these components are not good, get better ones, use those, you know. And I expect this amp to be extremely reliable as well, you know. Like I said, I've had it cranked up, no issues, no blown tubes, nothing so far. But I just hope that it remains reliable. I've heard they're very easy to work on, so I mean, longevity is there for it as well. If you can find one of these things, just buy it. You know, they don't come up for sale as much as they used to, but they are out there, and they will continue to be out there because they were mass produced. And so there are a lot of them out there. So anyways, so yeah, for the demo today, I'm just going to be basically playing some riffs. You know, I like riffs. Riffs are what I do. So I believe that today I'll be playing this here, my BC Rich Ironbird. This is a U-Series Ironbird. I did a video on it. You can watch that if you like. And I'll just run you through my signal chain really quick. So, Seymour Duncan Black Winter in the bridge of the Ironbird. So, you come over here, you can see that my signal goes into this pedal board here. Just put that back in here. So you've got the chromatic tuner there is always on. The Ditto looper is always in the signal. From there it goes into this American Loopers effects switcher. It has 2 effects loops on it. The first one is labeled drive. It has all of these drive pedals, so it's super overdrive, the microcline audio Dybbuk, the dead weld duality, and the KHDK Ghoul Screamer Mini. As you can see right now, that is the pedal that's on, so I'll probably be using that, and I'll just let you know if I change that at some point. I can also bypass those pedals altogether. There's also one of these 2 decimators is at the end of that chain, so that's why you hear some hiss coming back in right there. And so in the clean side, I just have this exotic SP compressor and this I believe this is a Moore pitch box, and that's like a it's like a really cool effect, like a chorus effect. You can hear it on some Van Halen albums. It's designed to imitate that. So yeah, in bypass mode, the signal goes from that Ditto looper through this into a buffer, okay, and then into the in-audio switcher, 8x7 right here. I don't have the JCA labeled yet, but it is channel 6, okay? And from there, I have the power station. It's in the loop, and it is activated, as you can see here. And so these are the most flat neutral settings that I could achieve using the power station. And those are my settings, okay? Over here, you can see the cabinet as it is mic'd, okay? Some of the other heads I'll be comparing this JCA100 with. In the effects loop of the power station, there is a additional decimator and a dispatch master, which has a bit of delay and a bit of reverb. And I might turn that on for some solos or some lead work later. The Pdeq, I believe it's the Pdeq pedal. It has a very subtle and very precisely modeled depth control built into it, as well as a presence circuit. Both of those are switchable. Right now I have the presence off and the depth is up around noon, and that is in the effects loop of the JCA100 to give it a bit of an extra depth. What's unique about the JCA100 is that it very precisely models a lot of those early Soldano tropes. I believe that the effects loop is pre-EQ in the JCA100. Either that or it's somewhere unorthodox in the signal chain. So not so great for delay effects and reverb effects, but pretty good for implementing a onboard EQ such as the Pdeq or maybe even a 10-band equalizer. I haven't tried that, but it sounds pretty natural, and it just gives it a little bit extra of that low-end blossom that I kind of like. So anyways, yeah, let's just get started. All right, so right now I'm just plugged straight into the amp. I'm not playing with any pedals on. There is just a decimator on the effects loop of the power station, which is giving me a little bit of a cleaner signal. Here, I'll turn the Pdeq EQ off, so now it's just amp tone. This is just with the settings I have set up. It's pretty cranked right now, so I'll adjust that back and take the power attenuator out in a moment. Very round, complete sounding tone, a lot of mids and a lot of sweep in the high end. I'll dial back the bass a little bit so we get a little tighter. Sounds great. I think it really needs a overdrive. So I'm going to go ahead and engage the Ghoul Screamer. Alright, I'm going to set it up how I had it before and just give you an example of like the tone as I like it. So I'm going to engage the Pdeq, and we'll keep the Ghoul Screamer on, and let me just adjust so that was right. The treble was a little higher and the bass was a bit higher, right? Okay, the overdrive might have been a little lower. That. So yeah, let's set everything to noon, which on this amp it has like the numbers only go to 9. That's like one of my only complaints about this thing is that why wouldn't you just make all the numbers go to 10? Like, I get it, Mike, you want your amps with your name on it to go to 11, but like, come on, man, just make it go to 10. Like 9 is so weird. So very weird marketing with this amplifier. You know, the badge is kind of weird looking. You know, kind of like a Converse logo. The other badge has like a 333 on it, I believe, which is 9, right? Yeah. So I mean, there's some numerology kind of thing going on with this. I'm not really sure what that's all about. Anyways, so I am going to reduce the masters down to like a reasonable level, I guess. Maybe like 1. It's kind of late. So yeah, we'll put everything else on noon. Even the crunch will demonstrate that. So we'll bypass the overdrives, the pedal and the effects loop, and we'll turn off the attenuator. It's gonna be loud. Oh, not too loud though. Yeah, I noticed this thing has a really usable sweep. It doesn't start to get loud until about 3 or 4. So right there is like quite a bit quieter than how it just was. We'll go up to 3. Yeah, so most amps, when you're up at this point on the dial, it's a lot louder. But I know for a fact that this thing can get extremely loud because I've played with a drummer, and you know, you get it up to 4 or so, and you're really kicking ass. I think I could use a little more treble. Has a pretty good bit of bass. Maybe some more presence. Still just straight in, no pedals. Sounds really good, like. It really has that Marshall Kerrang. I would say even more so than the SLO has. You know, it just really rings out. But it is a little bit muffled, I would say, in the top end. You really have to boost the treble. And you can't go super high on the overdrive channel with the gain, or it does get kind of muddy. It just loses some of that sparkle. Necessarily need an overdrive pedal in front of this thing, but like if you're gonna play extreme metal like I do, I think you'll want one. So we'll try a different overdrive now. I'm gonna engage the microphone audio Dybbuk, which has a little bit more of a low mid emphasis, sort of like an SD1, but without any of that sort of diode-y sort of you know, haze that comes along with using SD1 or a TS9. So let's try that out. scooped tone. Alright, so there you have it. The last thing I'll do with these settings is I'll engage the Pdeq Pdeq pedal and the Pdeq pedal here. Or the maker of this pedal is Pdeq. Pdeq Pdeq pedal. So there you go. Alright, so this is a little bit extra bass. Dude, just like some of the best tones that you can get. Like, I mean, I'm somebody who really likes Soldano amplifiers, so for me, this amp is just like perfection. You know, and I have a slow. Like, that amp is also perfection in its own way, but this amp is so just easy to play on, and it just feels so like fluid and like forgiving, you know, and it's not so like, it's like comparing 4K to HD, you know, it's like, or HD to VHS. Like, there's something nostalgic about plugging into an amplifier that's not necessarily made with the best components, that you don't have to hear every single frequency. You know, sometimes it's better to hear less so that you can play more, put more into it. But anyways, enough of that philosophical shit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to compare this amp with the other amps in the room. And to do that, we're going to use the power station. I'm going to try to regain my settings, and then we'll go from there. All right, so yeah, we got the same setup I just had. I have the Dybbuk engaged, the Pdeq Pdeq is engaged on the JCA100 here. I got my settings put back to how they were, so the master is up kind of close to 7, or I guess that's like maybe 3 o'clock, and that varies between my different amps. They each start to kind of break up at different points on the master, so you know, the Marshall is at kind of at noon on the master, and the Soldano is up at like 1 o'clock, I would say. Whereas the Bogner, it's like you can't even really judge it because the master is on like, you know, 2 or 3 out of 10, and then like the volume on the channel is up at noon. So, but anyways, they're all pretty much leveled together at this point, and that's kind of how I tend to leave my amps. It's kind of set up so they're in the sweet spot of the power amp, and I don't like it when channels come out there and they try to preach to you and act like you shouldn't crank your amps when you're playing heavy metal. Because let me tell you something, people have been cranking their amps since the 70s, and there's been heavy metal in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s. All these guys have used that master as a additional EQ control to dial in their amplifiers to get them to sound good, okay? There's a lot of amateurs out there on YouTube who don't know what the hell they're talking about. Don't listen to them. Get an attenuator, get a power station, get a reactive load, get something so you can experiment with all the knobs on your amplifier and find where the sweet spot is, where you're getting just a little bit of push from the power amp so you can really hear that girth start to come in and fill out the tone. That's how these classic records were made in large part. You know, you're not running an amp on 1 or 2, you're running at stage volume, which a lot of times is turning up to noon or higher. Sometimes less. Some, you know, as we just heard, you can get incredible tones without cranking the power amp. But I like to crank the power amp because it adds an extra dimension to it. To demonstrate, I'll sweep it in using the master here. So we were about right here. I can't really compensate for the volume difference, but you will hear the tone difference as it changes. So I'll record a little loop in a second right here. I'll record a little loop, and we'll do this comparison to demonstrate how the power amp affects the tone. So as you can hear, it's a big difference. There was 3 distinct tones there. The first tone was the non-cranked, which is how I had it in the last clip. The middle was put up to about 5 or noon, and you start to hear that power amp coming in. And the last setting was 7, where I had it set up at the beginning of this video, which is where you're getting a moderate to medium or even a large amount of power amp saturation distortion. If we go any higher than that, you start to get into the realm of the tone farting out and becoming overly fuzzy and compressed. And I don't really want to push this amplifier like that, or any amplifier like that, because it's really not necessary, especially with this sort of a gain level. The only time you really need to run your master on 10 is if you're using one of the 2 masters, like you have a clean channel and you need to run the gain way down so that you can, and then you have to compensate by boosting with the master, sort of treating it like a non-master volume amplifier, and that way you can level check your two channels. You know, your overdrive channel will need to have its own master at a lower volume so you're not distorting, but the clean channel with its more low level input will be able to drive that power amp less, so you'll need to turn it up. You won't get the compression that you would get with a higher level input signal like you would off of the lead channel, the overdrive channel. So that's been my experience with it anyways. So I encourage everybody to use all the knobs on their amplifier and to enjoy the amp for all the features that it comes with, which a big part of that, for me at least, has been being able to mix in some of that power amp distortion. You will need an attenuator to do this, otherwise your ears are going to explode. So be warned. Anyways, so yeah, let's do some comparisons. I think that clip I just recorded is probably good enough to compare all these amps with. So hopefully you don't get bored by it, but that's what we're using. So we'll go ahead and run it again through the JCA100, and then I'll stop, and then we'll move to a different amp. So here's the JCA100. So now we're going to switch over to the SLO. So these two should sound very, very close, and I think they do. So we'll try that. And again, we have the Dybbuk on, and the JCA100 does have the Pdeq Pdeq on and the effects loop. So the SLO is set up as it usually is. I have the right now I have the clip switch in the down position, which is a Friedman mod that was installed on this amplifier, and it just gives it a little bit of tightness. It gives it a little bit of tightness and a little bit of extra gain. So I'll leave it there for now. The bass is up on like 8, the middle is on 6, treble is on 8, the master is on 6, presence on 7, depth on 3, overdrive gain at 9. And yeah, let's hear it. Alright, so observations. The SLO definitely a little bit stiffer, a little bit more hi-fi. I feel like there's a lot more clarity in the pick attack coming through. Just some note information that wasn't there with the JCA. So we'll do a little more back and forth comparing it after this. Next thing we'll try is the T100. So the T100 is also a Mike Soldano-designed amplifier. It was built in Georgia in the United States at the Yamaha factory there. This particular unit has been modified significantly. It has a Onetics output transformer, which gives it some additional headroom. It can get a bit louder before it starts to distort. And it also kind of opened up the tone a little bit compared to the stock one, which was sort of dinky. And it seemed like a healthy upgrade for this amplifier. It also has a depth mod. The depth control is about at noon. Currently, the preamp on the overdrive channel is just about dimed. It's probably at about, what is that? About 8. The bass is pretty well dimed at 9. The middle is about 6. And the treble is about 6. And the master on this guy is around 8. So let's hear the Yamaha T100. right, so again, I feel like it's a little bit stiffer. I've noticed that the T100 carries a little bit more fizz. Same thing with the SLO. They carry a little bit more top end than the JCA100 has. Clearly the treble is turned up a good bit more on the JCA. It's around, you know, 8 out of 9. On the SLO, it's at about, you know, 8 out of 11, so it's a little bit lower. And then on the T100, the treble is around, it's around 6.5. So it can get real fizzy. All right, so next we'll try the Bogner Über Ultra, and I have it on the channel 2. Metamorph is about at noon. I've got it in tight mode. The Doom switch is on. Gain is at about, I don't know what there's no numbers, so it's about, you know, it's turned up pretty high. The bass is a little bit above noon. The mids are at noon. The treble is about the same as the bass, and the boost is off. So here we go. There you go. A very different tone. It has a lot more, oh, and I meant to mention the hair switches in the hair position. It's a very like burly tone, but it's also a little more scooped, and it's a little bit more pissed sounding, I would say. I would say it's a more forgiving amp to play on than the SLO, though. It's not quite as hi-fi. But yeah, very nice. All right, next we're gonna hear the Diezel Einstein. So I'm on channel 2. The gain is at about 1 o'clock. The treble is at about, what would you call that? It's probably at like 8 or 9. The mids are at about like 6. The bass is about the same. The depth is at noon. Presence is a little above noon. And yeah, it's cranked up pretty high. So let's check it out. There you go. The last amp that we need to compare here is the Marshall JMP 2203 1977. Has a HotMod in the V2 position. Both switches on the HotMod are up, so the bass switch and the gain switch are up. The preamp is just about turned up all the way, a little bit less than that. The master's on noon. The treble is at around 9. The mids are at like 7. The bass is dimed. And the presence is at around 6. So let's give that a try. Alright, there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that little comparison. I'm going to do like a little short, just like kind of playing around between the 3 Soldano circuits. So the SLO 100, the T100, and the JCA 100. And I'll just stop and let you know when I'm switching amps. So I'm going to go back to the SLO. And I'm going to engage a different overdrive. I'm going to turn on the SD1. switch the clip up into the top position. Gives a little more bass. Go to the JCA. Alright, let's go over to the T100. Back to the JCA100 now. Alright, well there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell icon. I really could use your help trying to boost this channel up a little more. I don't post as regularly as some other channels, but I try to treat this like a vlog and like a blog, you know. I try to really put a lot of effort into getting down to the nitty-gritty and the nerdery of these amplifiers. And so, yeah, I hope you like the video. Stick around for more. And keep it greasy.